Look around. They'll all leave you eventually. Some gently, some cruelly, some by time, others by choice. But they will. Not one of them can stay forever. And yet we keep calling them forever friends, don't we? We speak of loyalty as if it were a law of nature, when in truth it is a gift borrowed from someone far older. Think back. How many friendships have you lost? Some faded like dusk, others snapped like brittle branches. Did you wonder why? Did you feel betrayed by their absence? Here's a possibility you may not have considered. What if they were never meant to stay? What if friendship, in its purest form, was never meant to be found horizontally, but vertically? People are finite, and so are the friendships they offer. We rarely think about this when we're laughing in someone's company or feeling heard during a long conversation. In those moments, it feels like this bond will last forever. We believe, often unconsciously, that we've found someone who will always understand, always be near, always be on our side. But time, circumstance, and human nature quietly erode that certainty. People change, sometimes subtly, sometimes all at once. A friend you once trusted with your innermost thoughts may one day become a stranger to your heart. Perhaps their priorities shift. Perhaps life takes them physically away, or they grow into someone who no longer fits with the version of you they once embraced. Or worse, they might betray you, not with dramatic cruelty, but with casual neglect, with unreturned messages, with cold silences where warmth used to be. It's not always a failure of character. Sometimes it's just the ordinary wear and tear of living in a world governed by decay. Then there's the matter of mortality. No friendship, however deep, can outlive death. We rarely prepare for this. The deeper the friendship, the more we presume its permanence. And when death comes, suddenly or after a long illness, it rips away not just the person, but the shared language, the inside jokes, the history, the little ways you belonged to each other. You're left with memories, yes, but they are ghosts compared to the living presence you had. And in that loss, something becomes clear. Even the most loyal friend is not ultimate. They were precious, yes, but not permanent. Even while they live, even while they remain beside us, friends are bound by their limitations. They do not know everything about us. They cannot see every corner of our pain. You can sit next to someone, pour out your heart, and still feel misunderstood. You might say all the right words, but if they don't grasp the weight behind them, you leave the conversation feeling lonelier than before. This is not because they don't care, but because they cannot fully enter into your experience. No human can. Each of us is a world unto ourselves, and friendship is the attempt to bridge that world. But the bridge is often narrow, sometimes shaky, and always partial. Then comes the darker side of friendship, the part we don't like to acknowledge: jealousy, competition, comparison. Even those closest to us are not immune. Sometimes they want what we have. Sometimes they cheer when we fall, quietly, from a distance. Sometimes we do the same to them. Our affections are a tangled mess of love and pride, desire and resentment. Even in friendship, sin weaves itself through the fibers. This doesn't make all friendships bad. It makes them human, which is to say, fragile, flawed, and fleeting. This fragility doesn't mean we should stop loving others or refuse the comfort of human connection, but it does mean we should be cautious about where we place our deepest trust. If we lean with the full weight of our soul on another human being, expecting them to carry it, we are setting ourselves and them up for collapse. They were never meant to hold that burden. They cannot be your anchor. They are fellow travelers, not the ground beneath your feet. What's most deceptive about friendship is how convincing it can be in its early stages. We believe we've found someone who truly sees us, someone who will always remain. But with enough time, even the best friendships will be tested by change, by distance, by death, by misunderstanding. Some will endure those tests, many won't. Either way, the truth emerges. Human friendship, however beautiful, is always temporary. It can reflect loyalty, kindness, even love, but only God embodies those things perfectly and eternally. The rest of us are practicing, failing, trying again. But we are not permanent companions, and we cannot pretend to be. God is the only being who knows everything about you and still chooses to stay. This is not just comforting, it is a radical truth that separates divine friendship from every other relationship in your life. No human can know the full landscape of your mind. They can guess, they can observe patterns, they can listen when you speak, but they cannot peer into the silent places of your soul. They do not see the fears you hide behind your smile. They cannot trace the winding logic behind your decisions. They may love the version of you that you present, but they cannot access the unspoken parts. Even you, at times, may not fully understand your own motives. But God does. There is something terrifying and liberating about being fully known. Terrifying because it strips away all pretense, every mask you wear, every false motive behind your kindness, every moment of selfishness disguised as virtue. God sees through it without effort. There is no hiding, no explaining, no defending. His knowledge is not filtered through conversation, facial expressions, or assumption. It is total, it is immediate, it is exact. This kind of knowledge would be unbearable if it came from someone who stood in judgment, waiting to condemn you. But this is not how divine knowledge works. God's omniscience is not separated from His mercy. He sees everything and still loves. He sees your weakness and does not walk away. He sees your sin and does not recoil. He sees your failure and does not cancel you. In fact, it is precisely because He sees all that His love carries weight. Human love often depends on ignorance. The less people know, the easier it is for them to admire us. But God's love increases with knowledge. He sees more and still stays. He knows worse and still offers grace. This is not a distant theological concept. It is deeply personal. Consider the quiet, shameful thoughts you've never voiced aloud, the ones that rise up in the middle of the night, or surprise you when you're angry, afraid, or alone, the ones you wish you could scrub from your memory. You didn't confess them to anyone. Maybe you tried to forget them, but God was already there when they formed. He did not look away. He did not leave. He remained fully aware, fully present, and fully committed. Unlike human companions, God does not wait for you to explain yourself. He does not require you to speak clearly or behave properly to be understood. He knows you already. You are not a mystery to Him. The moments you thought no one noticed, the tears you wiped away in secret, the prayers you barely managed to form in your heart, He heard all of it. Before you spoke a word, He understood its weight. Before you named your grief, He already bore it with you. Because of this, your relationship with God is not like any other. You do not need to perform, impress, or persuade. You do not need to fear being misunderstood. You are already known. And not just known in general terms, known precisely, down to your last fear, last lie, last longing. Every layer of your soul is visible to Him. You might fool your friends, your family, even yourself, but you cannot fool the one who made you. And yet, His love does not shrink from the truth of who you are. He does not love the cleaned-up version of you, the version you're trying to become, or the version others expect. He loves you as you are. in full knowledge of your darkness and your dignity. That is not human love. That is divine friendship. It is unwavering because it is not based on illusion. It is faithful because it is not deceived. It is unlike anything we receive from the world, and that is why it alone can be trusted. There's a moment, sometimes subtle, sometimes crushing, when a friendship fails you, and it feels like the ground beneath your emotional life shifts. You thought someone would be there. You thought they would understand. You believed, maybe even deeply, that the connection you had was strong enough to endure time, change, or even conflict. But then they disappeared. Or they stayed, but not really. Their presence became thinner, their care more distant, their attention scattered elsewhere. And suddenly, the security you once felt through them is gone. That space they once filled now echoes. These moments reveal something we're rarely prepared to admit. No human being can be our ultimate source of comfort, identity, or trust. The disappointment of false or failing friendships feels sharper than it should, not because people are inherently evil, but because we've leaned on them in a way they were never meant to support. We gave them a role that only God can fulfill. We asked for permanent connection from a temporary soul. We asked for perfect understanding from an imperfect heart. And when they couldn't give it, we called it betrayal, when in truth it was just human limitation showing itself. This realization isn't just painful, it's clarifying. It unmasks the illusions we attach to human relationships. It brings to the surface how much we've depended on people to keep us grounded, to give us meaning, or to remind us who we are. And once that illusion breaks, we're forced to ask deeper questions. Why do I feel so empty when someone leaves? Why does their absence feel like my worth has been reduced? Why do I keep repeating this pattern of over-trusting, over-expecting, and then being undone when people fail? The answer isn't bitterness or cynicism. It's not that no one is ever worthy of trust. The answer is that we've mistaken the reflection for the source. Human friendship at its best reflects something divine. It mirrors the loyalty, tenderness, and connection we are meant to experience with God. But it is only a mirror. It can show us beauty, even truth, but it cannot be the light itself. And if you press your forehead to a mirror, begging it to warm you, you will always be cold. When friends let you down, it doesn't just expose their flaws. It reveals the misalignment in your own heart. You start to see that the ache you feel, the deep loneliness that erupts when someone turns away, isn't just about their absence. It's about the empty space where God's presence should have been central. It's about expecting an eternal bond from a finite vessel. Sometimes it takes the breakdown of a cherished friendship to realize just how fragile your emotional scaffolding has been. You see clearly, maybe for the first time, that your peace depended on someone else's affirmation, that your confidence was propped up by someone else's presence, that your sense of being known was borrowed, not grounded. And so, when that person walks away or fails to see you clearly anymore, you feel as though you've lost part of yourself. But what you've really lost is the illusion that they were enough. It's in this moment that the need for a higher anchor becomes painfully obvious. You need a friend who does not fade. You need a presence that is not seasonal or conditional. You need a relationship that holds you even when your worst thoughts surface and your worst days drag on. And only God fits that space, not because he is a concept to lean on, but because he is a person who does not change, who does not sleep, who does not tire of you. The failure of human friendship, then, is not only a wound, it is a window. It lets in the light that shows you what you've been leaning on. It calls you to step back, to reorder your soul, and to begin looking higher. It doesn't mean you stop loving others or stop hoping for real connection. It means you finally know where your ultimate trust must rest. When people fail you, they are not always betraying you. Sometimes they are pointing, without knowing, to the one who never will. I want you to stay with me, especially if you're skeptical, especially if this sounds too severe, too lonely, or too divine. Because what I'm about to say might just explain why every friendship you've ever had has left you slightly aching. When people speak of friendship with God, they often mean it as a metaphor, a way to describe closeness, comfort, or spiritual feeling. But the truth is far more startling. Friendship with God is not an illustration borrowed from human life. It is the original relationship from which all other friendships derive. The human experience of friendship, of being known, enjoyed, and cared for, is not the foundation, it is the echo. What we share with one another in our best moments of connection is merely a small, dim reflection of a relationship far older and far deeper than any we have tasted here. God is not like a friend. He is the friend, the one whose presence is not restricted by time or misunderstanding, whose affection is not tangled in pride, fear, or self-interest. In human relationships, there is always some level of uncertainty, always the risk that we are not being fully seen or fully understood. We adapt ourselves to each other's personalities. We avoid certain truths to keep the peace. Even in the most intimate of bonds, we filter ourselves, whether out of fear, habit, or the quiet knowledge that full exposure might end the relationship. With God, there is no such filtering. You are known as you are, not as you appear, and still, you are wanted. Human friendship, by its very nature, is partial. It is born from shared interests, mutual attraction, or proximity. Even the most lasting relationships began with a moment of chemistry, timing, or circumstance. We say we just clicked, as if something accidental gave rise to the connection. But what makes it endure? Often, nothing more than effort and hope. We do our best to remain loyal, to keep loving through changes and challenges, but it is always possible that one day something will shift and the bond will fray. We're used to this instability, we even expect it, but we rarely admit how deeply it unsettles us. With God, there is no click to wait for, no performance to maintain. The friendship is not initiated by you. It is not contingent upon your ability to impress, to entertain, or to be emotionally available. It was offered before you could even understand what it meant. It does not grow because of your charm or shrink because of your flaws. It is a reality based not in your emotional state, but in His nature. And what He offers is not the imitation of friendship, but its perfect fulfillment. When you experience human friendship, what you're really experiencing is a pale version of this original design. You may think the joy of laughing with someone who gets you is the pinnacle of connection, but that joy, real as it is just a fragment. The clarity you feel when someone listens well, the peace you feel when someone stands by you in crisis, these are not ultimate gifts. They are signposts. Their purpose is not only to comfort, but to point. They are meant to lead you back to the deeper reality they echo, that your soul was made for companionship with its Creator. We reverse the order when we try to understand divine friendship by comparing it to human ones. In doing so, we miss the foundation. We think of God as a version of our closest companion, just on a cosmic scale. But it is the other way around. Every moment of true connection we've had in this life, every conversation that left us changed, every glance that made us feel seen, every act of kindness that went deeper than obligation, was borrowed light, not originating in us, but flowing through us from the one who is love itself. So when we say God is our friend, We are not dressing up our faith with familiar language. We are naming something far older, far more real than anything else we've ever called friendship. Every meaningful relationship you've had was a sketch drawn in charcoal. Friendship with God is the color, the depth, the living canvas. It is not like human friendship. Human friendship is like, you can be surrounded by people, admired, celebrated, and still feel completely alone. It's a strange kind of emptiness, one that doesn't come from isolation, but from the absence of something deeper than company. Social popularity has a way of giving the illusion of connection. You might receive dozens of messages, hear your name spoken with approval, walk into rooms where people smile at your arrival. But none of that guarantees that anyone truly sees you. You can be the center of attention and still be invisible in the places that matter most. This is one of the great deceptions of modern life. We are trained to measure our value by how many people are around us, how many admire us, how many know our name. Platforms, parties, praise, all seem to promise connection, but the connection they offer is often thin. It's wide, but not deep. People may know what you do, what you post, what you achieve, but they may not know what keeps you up at night. They may cheer your successes but be indifferent to your inner struggles. Popularity can amplify your image, but it rarely touches your soul. There's a peculiar loneliness that comes from being known by many and understood by none. You find yourself in conversations where people assume things about you, project their desires or expectations onto you, and leave no room for the more fragile or complicated parts of who you really are. And when you try to express something real, something raw, you can sense how quickly it makes others uncomfortable. So you retreat. You learn to smile, to perform, to maintain the version of yourself that others are most comfortable with. And slowly, without even realizing it, you become disconnected from your own heart. This kind of disconnection is not fixed by adding more people to your life. It is not solved by being seen more often, invited to more places, praised by more voices. Because the ache is not for attention, it's for intimacy. Not the kind that arises from shared hobbies or mutual interests, but the kind that sees past the surface and into the soul. The kind that understands you without explanation and holds you without needing to be convinced. And that kind of intimacy is rare, even among friends. It cannot be manufactured or forced, and often it cannot be found in human relationships at all, not in their fullest form. What makes this even more complicated is that we often don't notice the spiritual loneliness beneath our social success. We convince ourselves that because people are around us, because laughter fills the air, because our names are remembered and our voices are heard, that we must be connected. But late at night, or in the quiet moments between distractions, the emptiness returns. It's not loud, but it's steady, a subtle sense that no one really knows you, no one truly understands, and no one is strong enough to carry the weight of your real self. And in those moments, something in you begins to search, not for more people, but for something higher. That search is not weakness. It is the soul remembering where it came from. It is the quiet recognition that only God can truly fulfill what human company cannot. Because God does not relate to your public image. He is not drawn to your curated self. He sees the parts you've hidden, even from yourself, and does not look away. He doesn't need you to impress him or earn his attention. You already have it. And in that attention is a kind of knowing that reaches deeper than any applause, deeper than any friendship formed through shared moments or mutual benefit. Spiritual loneliness is the soul's signal that something essential is missing. Not people, but presence. Not attention, but communion. And the only presence that meets that need fully is the one that has never left you, even when you didn't know to look for it. That presence doesn't compete with popularity, it exposes its limits. It reveals that beneath all our connections lies a longing for the one who made us, knows us, and waits quietly, patiently, for us to turn toward him. There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being unknown. You can be in a room full of people, even loved by many of them, and still feel the ache of not being fully seen. It is a subtle but persistent hunger, the desire to be understood without having to explain, to be accepted without needing to earn it. Everyone longs for this kind of connection. We want someone to look into our eyes and see not just our words or actions, but our fears, contradictions, and longings, and still choose to stay. But most human relationships can't bear the weight of that longing. Even the best of them fall short. People can know parts of you, your habits, your voice, your past, but they can never fully access your thoughts. They rely on what you share, and even then they hear through the filter of their own minds. Sometimes they misunderstand, sometimes they grow tired of trying. Sometimes they walk away because what you've revealed is more than they can handle. And this is not necessarily cruelty, it's limitation. People can only know you to the extent that you allow them, and to the extent that they're capable of seeing. This leaves us with a painful paradox. We're never truly alone, and yet we rarely feel truly known. Even in deep friendships, we hold back. We fear rejection. We fear being a burden. We fear that if we were really honest about how fragile we are, how lost we feel, or how inconsistent our hearts can be, the people we love might pull away. So we present edited versions of ourselves, hoping that the closeness we crave can still be found within the boundaries of what feels safe. And it works, for a while, but eventually the gap between who we are and who we've shown begins to ache. This gap cannot be filled by more conversation, more social circles, or even more vulnerability, though those things have value. The truth is that no one, not a spouse, not a best friend, not even the most empathetic soul, can fully step inside your interior world. They can walk beside you, but they can't live within you. Only one being can. Only one sees not just what you say, but what you mean. Not just what you've done, but what drove you to do it. Not just your hopes, but the fragile, inarticulate wishes beneath them. That one is God. What makes this reality so profound is that God's knowing is not passive. It is not distant, like a surveillance camera observing from a high place. It is intimate, personal, active. He knows you from the inside out, not just the facts of your life, but the shape of your soul. He knows how your thoughts bend under pressure, how your emotions coil when wounded, how your heart shifts in fear, joy, pride, or shame. There is nothing hidden from him, and nothing about you that surprises him. And even with that full knowledge that would likely drive most people away, he remains. He does not retreat from your weakness. He is not repelled by your inconsistency. He doesn't ask you to be more lovable before he loves you. He loved you before you spoke your first word. He understood you before you could explain yourself. He carried your sorrows before you could name them. In him, the ache to be known finds its answer, not because you become more articulate, but because he already knows. We often chase understanding from others, thinking it will give us peace. But the peace we truly seek comes not from being perfectly understood by people, but from being completely known by God. There is a rest that enters the soul when it no longer has to perform, defend, or explain. when you realize that the one who knows you best is also the one who loves you most, the loneliness begins to dissolve. Not because the world has changed, but because you now live in the quiet confidence that you were never invisible and never unloved. So, what are we left with? A world full of people, some loyal, some not, some loving, some careless. Friendships that rise and fall, that warm us briefly but cannot carry the full weight of our souls. We walk through life longing to be known, craving stability, aching for someone who won't grow tired, won't misunderstand, won't leave. And again we're reminded, no matter how close another human comes, there is always a distance they cannot cross. But what if that distance was never meant to be crossed by them? What if the loneliness you feel, even when you're not alone, is not a curse, but a call? A call to look higher. A call to remember that friendship, in its purest and most permanent form, was never meant to be found among equals, but between the created and the Creator. Only God sees you completely. Only He knows the full map of your thoughts and still stays. Only He remains when everyone else walks away. And what He offers is not a cold, cosmic authority. It is intimate. It is friendship. Not the borrowed version you find in people, but the original, unchanging, all-knowing, soul-sustaining relationship your heart was made for. Yes, people will fail you. Yes, even your closest companions will fall short. But that is not the end. That is the reminder that no one is your friend but God. And that is not your loneliness. That is your home.